Alright, boys and girls, welcome back to the shop. This is part 3 of my pneumatic sleeper frame tutorial. We now come to the part that really scares the crap out of me because there are so many ways that this can go wrong. What we need to do is we need to drill out the top of our ASA just a little bit in order to seat the O-ring or the gasket or whatever it is that you're going to use. Okay. The reason that this scares me is because there are lots of ways that it can go wrong. The goal here is to just go in a little bit. I've got a piece of plexiglass. This is kind of hard to see, but I've gone in. I haven't gone down too deep, just it's like a 1/16 of an inch, okay? It is just deep enough that, I mean, that's the O-ring sitting on top, and then when we put it into the little hole, little recess, that is the O-ring in the recess, okay? And then we're going to do, basically, we're going to do that, but we're going to do it on the top of the ASA so that there's a little recess for the O-ring to go in. The reason we can't just, I mean, you might be thinking, well, Peter, why can't you just drill a hole through here, just a little tiny hole, and then you put the O-ring right there, and then you have the ASA, or sorry, you have the LPR coming in from the top through the frame, and that will just kind of squeeze it and hold it in place, right? No, it won't, because when air is coming up through the little hole, we're going to put a little tiny hole in the top of the ASA so that air is going to blast up through. That air is coming through at 800 psi before it gets to the LPR. It's not until after the LPR coming out the side that it's down to 40 psi or whatever, okay? If you don't have, if it's just the O-ring sandwiched between these two things, then the O-ring is not going to hold. No matter how much pressure you put on it, the O-ring is going to blow out the sides and it's going to rupture. Okay, but if we make just a little recess and it's kind of sitting inside of that spot, and then the LPR sits on top of it. Hold on, oops. Okay, now once the air comes up through and it's pushing on the inside of that O-ring, the O-ring is going to be pressed against the outside of the metal ASA and it won't blow out. Okay, this, by the way, this applies even if you have not just an O-ring but a better gasket like this. I tried this once where I just had this flat on top of the ASA with a little pinprick hole and it blew it out right away. It didn't even take half a second. Okay, it does not last. You need to have a little recess drilled in the top that kind of holds the O-ring in place or the gasket in place and keeps it from going anywhere. Okay, the problem with this is that if you don't drill this gasket, this recess, if you don't drill it exactly in the right spot, okay, let's say you're a little bit off to the left, then instead of coming down exactly on, your LPR comes down like this, then, well, that side of the O-ring is going to blow out, okay? Also, if you go too deep, okay, if you go too deep with your recess, then the bottom threads of the LPR will actually hit the top of the ASA, and then you won't have a good seal, okay? You could also, if you really go too deep, you could actually, I mean, the top of this is only, look at how thin this is. This is only, let's see here. That's the part I want to go through. So that's less than 1/4 of an inch thick. And if I'm drilling through the top with, you know, this thing, okay, and you'll notice that it's a little bit tapered, so even though the flat end, the edge of it is only going to be 1/16 of an inch, the inside is going to be deeper. Okay, sorry, that was a really crappy shot. So this part's only 1/16 of an inch, but this is almost double that. This is 1/8 of an inch or so. So this is really, really tricky. It's really nerve-wracking. So you have to make sure that it's centered, and you have to make sure that it's only deep enough to hold the O-ring in place. This is where, if you do not have a drill press, this is really, really difficult. It's possible to do it. I have done it, but you've got to be really careful and go really, really slow. And again, you don't want to start with your big drill bit. You actually want to start with a 1/8 drill bit and just go in a 1/16 of an inch, and then step it up to a 1/4 inch drill bit, and then go in a 1/16 of an inch, and then step it up to, you know, a 5/16 drill bit and do a 1/4 of an inch, and keep on going until you get to the size that you need. Since I have a drill press, I'm just going to go straight for broke. I'm going to have this all centered up, and I'm just going to go down. I'm not going to even use this, I'm going to use a flat end mill, which I don't have. Sorry about that. Here we go. I'm going to use an end mill. Okay, this is a 3/8 end mill. This is pretty much exactly the width that I need. And this has a flat top, so this gives me a lot more flexibility about how I'm going to go. I'm just going to line it up, make sure that it's straight, and then I'm going to go in about a 1/16 of an inch, and I'll have a little recess when I'm said and done. Okay, the scary part is finished, and now I have a little recess. Again, hard to see, but it's just, I don't know, maybe an eighth of, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. Really, really, really fine. Okay, that's not what I want to use. I don't want to use an O-ring. I've got my little gasket here, and let's see, so you can see it there when it's just resting on the top, but once it's in the groove, look at that. Look at how perfectly that fits. And then this, the little part that sticks up, fits right inside of the bottom of the LPR. And that is good. Okay. I am pretty happy with that. Now, the last thing that we have to do is we need to drill a hole through the top of the ASA so that air, when it comes into, out of the tank, it can go up that way. Again, you have to be a little bit careful here because you want to make sure, it depends on what ASA you're using, but you want to make sure that whatever hole you have going down doesn't interfere with the mechanism inside of the ASA. For this one, there is, I don't know if this comes the whole way off. No, I don't think it does. Anyway, I do have to be a little bit careful here, okay, because when I'm going to take I think I'm going to use a 1/16 drill bit or a 332, and I'm going to, drill through the top right in the center of my hole. I'm going to go a little bit of an angle to the back, just to make sure I stay far away from this O-ring. Once this manifold is inside, this O-ring is what seals and makes sure that none of the air comes out the front, and it all just goes out the ports or up at the top. So I want to make sure that I'm well away from that. The other thing I need to make sure that I do is that once I drill through, the top end, the top of the ASA, the hollow part, is going to be a little bit rough, okay, because you're going to be drilling through metal, it's going to push through, and then if I push this O-ring through that hole, I can rip open the O-ring, I can tear the O-ring with that hole. So after I cut through with the hole, I need to make sure that that part is really, really smooth. And I can just use some sandpaper and stuff it down in there and spin it around a couple of times, and that should do the trick. But just be careful that you don't tear up the O-ring when you're all finished. Okay, so I've drilled through my ASA here. Ended up using a 532 drill bit. I've already sandpapered it down. A good way to know that you're safe is if you take a Q-tip and you rub it on there, and then you look at your Q-tip. There's no pulling. Okay, if there was a jagged edge, like up here, I still kind of have a jagged edge. Well, that's not a very jagged edge. Where's a jagged edge? I don't have any jagged edges. Oh, here's a good one. See how it starts to pull and it starts to fray? That's really hard to see out here. Anyway, trust me, when it's your own eyes, you can tell that if you run a Q-tip over it, if there's any kind of little jagged edge, it will start shredding the Q-tip. But if it's no jagged edge, it's just going to kind of smush the Q-tip flat and it'll be fine. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm comfortable that when I push this through, it's not going to, it's not going to mess it up in any way. I'm going to add a spot of oil. Shout out to Outlast Premium Oil. Just a little bit. Okay. And then, you know what? Let's use our okay. All right. So there we have it. Now, doing the final construction, this is just a matter of lining things up, okay? We're going to take out our LPR. All right. We're going to put in our retention screw. This is just going to help us kind of line things up, make sure that the ASA doesn't move around once it's on. Okay, we're going to slide this on and get the hole lined up just so, and then tighten that down. Am I still happy with that? I think so. Yeah. Probably really should put another screw in there. I'll probably pull this apart and do that in a second. And then going to take our gasket and our fitting and screw this into here. You know, I could probably just stick it down there and then use an Allen wrench to make sure it's kind of centered. Okay. Then okay. Now, you know what? I forgot one other thing. There are so many little things to forget here. It's going to be hard to tighten this down by hand. You don't want to just tighten down the LPR by hand because it's probably going to leak. So what we're going to do instead, if I can find my wrench, it's right under me the whole time, we are going to remove the bottom part. Okay, once we get the LPR apart and we pull out that little screw. Okay, now we just have this bottom part and we can screw this in. Eventually. And then I can use, this is a, what is this? This is a 9/16 socket wrench. And I can just get that down. Not over tight. I mean, if you over tighten it, you can shred the thing, the gasket. All right. Make sure our spring is back in there. And now we can get on the LPR like so. Oh gosh, this is hard to do. Okay. Now the LPR, this O-ring at the really bottom is pretty fat, so you can be pretty generous with this. Okay, like that's as far as I can go on, but obviously that's not going to work because I can't have the fitting sticking out. So I'm going to put the fitting there, and this should still seal up. Okay, even though it's not on as tight as it possibly can be. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to get an air tank and we're going to see if this works. All right, I've got both my side ports are plugged up, so we have no air escaping out the side. Turn this on. Okay. Now you probably can't hear, but you know, I can't hear any air hissing out either. But if I did, I should be able to troubleshoot whether it's the gasket. If it was leaking out the gasket, you'd be able to hear it from the back, you'd be able to hear it from the front. If it was leaking out this O-ring, that would be coming from a different spot. And if I have the LPR turned off right now, but if I start turning it up, eventually, hold on. There we go. So I've got air coming up through this LPR, and now I can attach pneumatics up here, create the rest of the trigger. But that's a pretty good project. Just to let you know, just making this video took me over 3 hours, okay? And I know exactly what I'm doing, and I've been doing this for a long time. So don't expect this to be an afternoon project. It's going to take you a while, and you might need to break it up. But that is how you do it. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me or leave me a message, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right? Good luck building.